Hey all, here are OS reviews. So a lot of robot vacuum cleaners these days, which are two-in-ones, can not only vacuum, but claim to offer mopping functionality. But the mopping part has always been pretty weak, so if we take a look at this example here from Dreamy, it has this optional little accessory that is the quote-unquote mop, which you can attach onto the top, but this is essentially just a pad, and especially if the surface is really dirty, it's not going to do the best job of cleaning it. It also has pretty limited capacity in terms of liquid or water that it will get the surface kind of moist and then actually scrub off. So these two-in-ones have never been really that effective at mopping, to be honest, but today we're taking a look at a model that is just dedicated only for the floor washing part. This one here from iLife is called the Shinebot W450. So if you are living in a space or if you're trying to take care of an environment that doesn't have a lot of carpet, so you don't need something with vacuuming, but rather tiles, laminated floors, wood floors, marble, and you have to just kind of wash it, get it as clean as possible, this is going to be one of the best options. So it has this smart navigation using the camera sensor, and otherwise it is going to be thicker than a standard robot vacuum because it has to hold more volume for water and also have a separate compartment that is just for storing the dirty water, 900 milliliters. So this is not going to be as easy to go underneath a sofa or couch. Different cleaning modes you can set up, as well as zones which you can prohibit the robot from going into. So they have this patented 4-step process, which is spraying, scrubbing, suction, and scraping. This one here also will prevent itself from falling downstairs. It has anti-collision. So in the box, we do have a quick user guide. What I do like is they're bundling this with a remote control for more easily moving it around and going through the different modes if you don't want to use the companion app. It's always great to have this as a secondary choice. Top here features one of the docks for recharging the robot. We also have the aforementioned kind of roller, or the part that is trying to scrub the floor as it goes. We have also a bottle of solution that they get you for cleaning hard floors. So they give you a cleanser as well, but obviously you can use your own soap. Here's the actual adapter which plugs into the dock, so you can then supply power into it. And then we have just the Shinebot itself, which on first impressions is much smaller from the top than I was expecting in terms of diameter. Like I said, it is pretty thick just to hold the extra water, but the actual surface area on the top is actually quite compact. Here it is next to the Dreamy L10 Pro, which is a pretty standard sized robot vacuum, especially when looking directly downwards and not from the side. And that's certainly not a bad thing, since it's going to be more nimble in terms of traveling around and covering the area. So in terms of the top here, we do have a film that just kind of tells you how to empty the compartments for cleaning. We have just a power key and a clean button on the top that you can begin manually, a mode selection key directly on the robot. So again, you don't have to even use the remote or app necessarily. Inside you can see kind of the roller that passes through and then sucks up the water again. So there is one already pre-applied. The other one was just an optional second in case you want to replace it or one is being washed. And by the way, this is a very glossy piano black plastic. It looks pretty attractive, but is a bit of a fingerprint magnet. And here we can see kind of the water compartment. This side here is actually where you can empty out the dirty water compared to on the inside. We do have another nozzle here that's actually for filling in water. And here's what it looks like with the water tank attached on the back. We have just some of the wheels for moving it about, charging contacts, and that's pretty much it. It is fairly low in terms of the wheels aren't the largest in diameter because it has to be a little bit closer to the surface as part of its mopping duties. This brush has to be touching the ground, which means that compared to some of the other robot cleaners, which are climbing over carpets, which often have rugs and just larger terrain in general, those wheels are usually a little bit more heavy duty. The user manual here does offer a few good points that I will emphasize, one of them being that with the included cleaner, the ratio that's recommended is 1 to 100. So you can use the bottle cap as a measurement, 6 milliliters that can be used for a full tank of water. And otherwise, in terms of the recommended surfaces, it works best on kind of tiles and wood floors, which have smaller gaps in between each of the pieces. If it's a really large kind of gap between the tiles, more than 10 millimeters, it may not be quite as effective. Liquids and stains, it should technically also clean that up. At least it's claiming to be skilled at these things. Now, one slight consequence of having the relatively low profile wheels is it's not actually sufficient to climb into this charging dock itself. So that means that when you actually empty out the water after each clean, you do have to kind of then put it onto the top of this dock for it to charge. It does have voice prompts as well, so if you're turning it on, it will actually tell you that. And by the way, there's LED lights underneath.
It's starting now. Please wait.
That will also give you some visual indications. Right now, the mode it's going to be using for how it navigates is going to be in that shape, but I can also tap on it again to change the mode, and you can see it displayed on the top of the robot. So overall, it's actually working very well. I have to say I'm impressed in terms of how clean it can get the floor after just a wipe or two, as it applies a little bit of pressure and also is sucking up most of the water, although it can still leave a bit of a residue that doesn't really damage the flooring, but you can always go behind it and maybe kind of wipe it clean completely if you want to. And similar in terms of other smart robot cleaners that we've seen recently, it does tend to avoid parts that it's covered before and then just do continuous sweeps. It's actually working quite well in terms of battery as well. I actually covered around 1,000 square feet and it still retained about 50% of juice left. And I also found it to be surprisingly conservative in terms of how much water it's actually using. Again, in that 1,000 square feet total, it only ate up, I would say, around 70% of the soapy water, and so there was still about 30% left. You can also take a look at some other commands here in the software, such as again, the water usage, the travel speed. You can also make it faster or slower. The brush speed you can also adjust, and as you can kind of hear in that test, it does produce a little bit of sound because there is a vacuum that is sucking up the water as it goes to prevent any big puddles from accumulating. So there is going to be a little bit of ambient noise. It's not completely quiet as you might expect from just a mop. Otherwise, we can also take a look at zone cleaning, so to partition different areas where you don't want it to go to. And you can also take a look at if you want to go through a cleaning plan or just a drying plan. If you select on drying, it's only going to operate that kind of vacuum component and won't spit out any water any further, which is pretty neat. So you can actually do this two-step process, just leave it to do itself, and after, let's say, an hour or so, everything will be completely done. Actually, pretty good results. You do get a nice shine on the floor as well. It really gets rid of a lot of the grease and has gotten rid of almost all the marks that I was looking at. You can also activate a remote control, by the way, if you want to manually push it up, down, left, and right, kind of like a remote control car. That works also pretty well. But like I said, the intelligent pathing that it takes is already quite good, so I didn't really have a case where I needed to use this too much. What I will say though is, compared to a robot vacuum on carpet, because the surfaces, depending on what you're putting it on, such as marble, can be very slick. So at times the wheels might verge a little bit, not always going in a completely straight line. Sometimes there's going to be a little bit of a curvature, but overall it still is managing to cover all the area, since it will go through a few times without really bumping into anything. Even if you have something that's relatively small in front of the robot, like a sock, for example, or a backpack, it tends to avoid it and then just walk on the outline without really disturbing it, which is good. The one downside though is it doesn't really delineate between carpet and flooring. So if you have, let's say, a living room that is made out of hardwood floor and then another, let's say, dining room that has carpet, you really want to have a blocker, such as using that zoning function or putting something physical so that it stops. Otherwise, you don't want it to be spitting out any water when it transitions into carpet. It does have voice prompts as well that will tell you when it's starting to recognize as well as detect the edges of a room, when it's cleaning and when it's stopped. It will give you those alerts. But you can also activate a do not disturb mode that can turn off any of the voice prompts.
function disabled.
So you can hear it's been disabled. Cleaning procedure here, I would say it's comparable to a robot vacuum in that when you're done, you have to then dump out the water, and then the kind of brush here you should also remove and give it a rinse or wash really before you reuse it again, because otherwise it will be dirty. So that's similar to how on a robot vacuum, after you're done, you have to empty out the dustbin and sometimes also clean off if there's any hair or anything that got tangled up. So it's similar, and there's a little bit of maintenance work in between just to make it ready to go again the next time. Overall, again, a pretty nice robot floor cleaner. And so if you're interested, you can check out more details in the links down below. For now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the iLife Shinebot W450.